Hello, everyone. Today, I'm bringing you a new story. If you enjoy it, please remember to like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you all so much. Now, let's get into the story. It opens with the deafening sound of fireworks exploding across the sky. One might think the Lunar New Year had arrived, but instead, it was a horrific scene. Memories surfaced one after another. Her birthday had become the most painful day of her life. Why had everything turned out so terribly? Amid the screams, someone shouted, "Run! Hurry, run!" The girl's mother was caught in the midst of the terrifying explosion. She kept screaming at her young daughter, "Run! Hurry, run!" It was supposed to have been a joyful and meaningful birthday, a day when she would be cherished by her family. But tragedy struck far too quickly. At that moment, one question kept echoing through her mind. "Mom, why is this happening?" The little girl knelt on the ground, crawling through the gaps in an attempt to escape. Yet her gaze remained fixed on her mother. "Is it because I'm his daughter?" Tears welled up in her eyes. 8 years had passed since that horrifying day. Outside the hospital, the little girl had grown up. She was on the phone with someone, but the person on the other end clearly was not pleased. "The medical bills have been overdue for a month. The doctor said that if we don't pay," the man on the other end repeatedly shouted, "You little bitch! Your mother might as well be dead already. Why should I keep wasting my money on a dead person? Are you out of your mind?" Her eyes filled with resentful tears. "But you said you had been giving us money all these years," the man continued to curse. "Damn it, hiring your whole family in the first place was the unluckiest thing that ever happened to me." She angrily shot back, "You're the unlucky one? If you hadn't violated regulations by storing explosive materials at the fireworks factory, my family would never have ended up like this." The man cursed again. "You little brat, still trying to threaten me? Who caused the explosion at the factory? You know the answer in your heart. Your mother was a mistress, and she gave birth to a bastard like you. You got what you deserved, and now you want to drag me down with you." The moment she heard those words, she froze as though struck dead. Her phone slipped from her hand. The man delivered one final warning. "Call me again, and I'll expose the fact that you too are still alive." At those words, her phone fell to the ground. He hung up, leaving only the relentless beeping tone. This hospital had been part of her life for 8 years. Ever since she was old enough to understand, her mother had lived in shame. Throughout her childhood, her mother had believed that enduring this suffering was her way of atoning. She slowly entered the familiar room. Her mother still lay in the hospital bed, her body wrapped in white bandages. She had been lying there for so long. But what sin had they committed? The steady beeping of the heart monitor continued without pause. That sound would likely haunt her for the rest of her life. Her mother had clearly only been a woman who had been deceived. Why did she have to endure such suffering, both physically and emotionally? She had never been able to choose where she was born. "Mom, you really are such a fool." Her body trembled as she thought about it. What would become of her life? What would happen to her future? But those who should atone were them. They were the ones who deserved to die. All of them. She swore to herself that she would take back everything. Was it him or that beast? That animal had burned her entire family to death. She had to catch him. Her mind was filled with an urgent voice pushing her onward. She could think of nothing except revenge. She would never forgive him, not in 100 lifetimes. She would make him experience the hell she lived in, 100 times worse if necessary. No matter the price. Even if she had to sacrifice her love, her ideals, or even her life, she did not care. This was International Trin Hospital. "Dr. Kwong, please sign the surgery consent form." A nurse smiled at her. "You've worked at the hospital for 3 months, and you're finally getting to perform surgery as the lead surgeon." "Gongvitin, Dr. Kwong Tu Teng." Kwong Thursday Tien smiled back. "Thank you very much." Just then, the sound of brakes screeching came from outside. "The chairman has been injured. Where's Chairman Trin?" "Move aside." Kwong Thursday Tien turned toward the commotion in alarm. A panicked young man rushed in. "The chairman is injured. Prepare an operating room immediately." A man lay on the stretcher, blood flowing all over his body. "Call all the most skilled doctors here. You must ensure the chairman's safety." The entire hospital was thrown into chaos. The department heads quickly arrived for an emergency consultation. The hospital's top doctors gathered to discuss the case in hushed but heated voices. "The wound is so close to his heart. If the operation fails, we'll be fired. Does the deputy director still have time to worry about his job? If Chairman Trin dies during treatment, none of us will have a peaceful life afterward." After hearing the reports, the hospital director looked at the doctors and asked, "That is the situation. Do you all understand? The deputy director will perform this operation as the lead surgeon. Another doctor said anxiously, for thoracic surgery, Professor Zhao is the most respected expert. To ensure safety, I believe it would be more reliable for him to lead the procedure. Professor Zhao was drenched in sweat. No, Director. It's not that I'm trying to shirk responsibility. It's just that, given the current situation, I cannot say I'm confident. Another loud argument broke out. Professor Zhao, are you trying to resign? You don't want to do your best for the chairman? The room descended into chaos. Deputy Director, aren't you doing the same? It seemed everyone was trying to avoid the dangerous operation. Seeing the meeting turn into a marketplace, the hospital director shouted, "Enough!" The young man spoke coldly. The chairman's life is hanging by a thread. I don't have time to listen to you people pass the responsibility around. Choose a doctor within 10 minutes. If treatment is delayed, none of you will live to regret it. The hospital director paled at the young man's threat. What should we do? At that moment, Kwang Thursday Tien stepped forward from the back and declared firmly, I can be the lead surgeon. The young man turned toward Kwang Thursday Tien, intrigued by her words. The hospital director snapped angrily. Outrageous. Don't talk nonsense. This is the chairman we're talking about. Are you serious? You have the most ordinary credentials in the entire department. Do you think you are more capable than all the department heads here? Kwang Thursdayton answered calmly. I do not think I am better than any of you. I simply place the patient's life above everything else. The director was left speechless. The young man walked up to Kwang Thursday Tien and held out his hand. If you're that confident, then you will lead the operation. Kwang Thursday Tien approached him, her face icy and composed. The man's expression darkened. But if you fail, you understand the consequences, don't you, Dr. Kwang Thursday Tien? The scene shifted. A woman and a man were on a date and then passionately made love. You're so good. You feel so amazing. Just as they reached their peak, a phone began ringing. Cousin, your phone is ringing. Ignore it. Keep going. I can't take it anymore. The two continued entwining with each other. Your voice message has been forwarded to voicemail. Third miss. The chairman was suddenly attacked and is currently receiving emergency treatment at International Trin Hospital. Please come immediately. Back at International Trin Hospital, Kwang Thursday Tien had begun the operation. Outside, the young man watched intently. He instructed his subordinate, silence those reporters. News that the chairman was shot must not get out. Yes, sir. Then he asked about the three sisters. Have the three young misses been notified? His subordinate reported, we can't reach the third miss. The other two are probably already on their way. He sneered. Such a good chance to put on a show. They won't miss it. He looked toward the operating room. Investigate Dr. Kwang Thursday Tien's background for me. At the critical moment, Kwang Thursday Tien put on her surgical gloves. I never expected that after 22 years, we would meet again today, and under these circumstances. Kwang Thursday Tien held the scalpel in her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. The first incision went smoothly, yet as she operated, memories flooded back into her mind. That bastard had destroyed her life. Back then, he and her mother had had a fierce dispute. We lived like stray dogs, forced to endure the ridicule and abuse of everyone around us. Why did you have to drive us to death? Why couldn't you leave us a way to survive? Innocent people were buried in a sea of flames. Why were those childhood memories so painful? All these years, I fought desperately to live well. Also, I could find a chance to get close to you and make you pay for your cruel, vicious actions. I am determined to drag all of you down into hell. Today, she was operating on that old man's heart. Her nerves trembled slightly as the sound of his heartbeat pounded loudly in her head. I never thought you would deliver this opportunity to me yourself. The old man lay on the operating table, continuously muttering one name, Mantin. Upon hearing it, Kwang Thursday Tien stiffened and stared at him. Mantin was her mother's name. How dare you still mention my mother's name? His blood pressure suddenly dropped. The monitor sounded a continuous warning alarm. The surgical team panicked and looked toward Kwang Thursday Tien. Dr. Kwang, what should we do? Seeing her standing still, they pressed her anxiously. Dr. Kwang, say something. Why are you silent? Dr. Kwang, respond quickly. The chairman will die. After remaining silent for a moment, Kwang Thursday Tien seemed to make a decision and called out, Typoplasma. Yes, Dr. Kwang. The plasma was immediately supplied. Kwang Thursday Tien's movements were calm and precise. She must have already calculated something in her mind. Kwang Thursday Tien was composed and confident. Don't worry, I won't let you die so easily. Of course, I won't let you continue living comfortably either. I have to find out who set that fire all those years ago. Whether it was you or your beloved family, none of you will escape your sins. I will take revenge on all of you. After concentrating on the procedure, Kwang Thursday Tien finally removed the bullet. It clattered onto the metal tray, breaking the tense silence. Blood must be repaid with blood. I will make you pay. Kwang Thursday Tien declared confidently. The surgery is complete. Begin suturing the incision. The most dangerous stage had passed, and the operation proceeded smoothly. Rest assured, Director, the operation was a success. The young man came outside and stood before Kwang Thursday Tien. He said encouragingly, "You've worked hard, Dr. Kwang. I need to speak to you privately about the chairman's surgery." Seeing that his arm was injured and blood was beginning to seep out, Kwang Thursday Tien said, "Then please come to the examination room with me, Director. I happen to have something to discuss with you as well." Inside the room, Kwang Thursday Tien treated his wound. "Thank you, Dr. Kwang." He took off his shirt, revealing his toned, muscular body. Kwang Thursday Tien felt slightly embarrassed and focused solely on bandaging his injury. The wind rustled outside the window. Kwang Thursday Tien kept her eyes on his wound and did not look up. Captivated by Dr. Kwang's beauty, he stared at her in a daze. After finishing the bandage, Kwang Thursday Tien lifted her head and smiled. "All done. It's nothing serious. The bullet only grazed you." Seeing him still staring at her, she repeatedly called out, "Director? Director, come back to your senses." Then Kwang Thursday Tien suddenly said, "Are you interested in making a deal with me?" After putting his clothes back on, he asked in surprise, "Kwang Thursday Tien, what kind of deal?" She took the bullet from her pocket and held it in front of him. "I know you want this, don't you?" Seeing the bullet in front of him, he reached out to grab it. Kwang Thursday Tien immediately pulled it away. He was startled by how quickly she reacted. Then she said, "I want to become Chairman Trin's personal physician." He was surprised by her request. "Dr. Kwang, are you threatening me?" At that moment, several doctors passed through the corridor and stopped outside the room. "Dr. Kwang, once you're done putting on an act, obediently go make your rounds. You really don't know your place. There's no hope of you becoming a full-time doctor now." Kwang Thursday Tien glanced toward the door. "As you can see, there is no longer a place for me at this hospital." She raised the bag containing the bullet, "And that is because I saved your Chairman Trin." Kwang Thursday Tien placed the bullet in his palm. "I hope you will consider it carefully." Then she turned and left, leaving the director staring after her in astonishment. Holding the bullet in his hand, he watched Kwang Thursday Tien return to Chairman Trin's hospital room. The investigation had only uncovered her university records and her classmates' evaluations of her. A study machine who never smiles. No family. Always alone. All information on Dr. Kwang had been gathered. On the surface, there seemed to be nothing unusual. Hearing that she was a machine who never smiled, he was taken aback. "Never smiles? Just now? She was laughing right in front of me while sweetly shaking that bullet at me. Could the person described in those records really be the same person?" As he pondered, the door was suddenly kicked open with a bang. "Which bastard pulled this dirty trick?" A man stormed in, shouting, "Where's my father?" It was Lam Dao Tuan, putting on the manner of a hooligan. Beside him was a fashionably dressed young woman. "What time did you say the goods would be ready?" Lam Dao Tuan walked up to the man and said, "The chairman has not regained consciousness yet, but the operation was successful." The young woman beside him remained on the phone. 3 o'clock won't work." While listening intently to the call, her face suddenly turned pale. "Then what about 5 o'clock?" She immediately rushed over, threw herself onto the old man lying in the hospital bed, and began sobbing dramatically. "Dad, Dad, how could this happen to you? Hello? Dad, open your eyes." The voice on the phone kept calling out, "You damn woman, why aren't you answering? Do you still want the goods or not?" Then she picked up the phone again, as though no tearful farewell had happened. Something came up. 5 o'clock is fine. "Okay, I'll be there on time." Seeing how rude the two newcomers were, Lam Dao Tuan warned them, "Please keep your voices down." The thug-like man looked at him. "Lam Dao Tuan, stop pretending to be a dutiful son. If my father dies, you'll get a share of the inheritance too, won't you?" Lam Dao Tuan replied coldly. The chairman is out of danger. It is too soon for you to be saying such things. The man glanced at the old man, lying in a hospital bed. Really? My father's health is quite good, then. The young woman, who had been sobbing moments ago, startled at Lam Dao Tuan's words and backed away. Damn it, why didn't you say so earlier? That hospital bed reeks. I thought he was already dead, and we were here to divide the inheritance. Who knew he was still alive and kicking? Lam Dao Tuan reminded them. Please keep quiet. You are in a hospital. Kwong Thursday then entered from outside, her expression as cold as ever. She added, Do you know this is a hospital? Kwong Tu Ten Bo Past Lam Dao Tuan. The young man rushed forward and grabbed her hand. You were the one who operated on my father. Kwong Thursday Tien gave him an icy look. I heard you have only been working at this hospital for 3 months. This was Jing Quan, Jing Chai Van That Son. At the time of the incident, he was 20 years old and had a motive for murder. Jing Quan Stai Stai At Kwong Tu Ten. Just as tempers were flaring, a sudden smell rushed into their noses, making both of them want to throw up. Looking over, they saw Na Sang spraying an entire bottle of perfume. Na Sang stopped spraying that. Trin Na Sang held the perfume bottle and sprayed it wildly. She looked at everyone and winked. What? I'm just using perfume to disinfect father's hospital room. This was Trin Na Sang. She had only been 12 when the incident occurred, making it nearly impossible for her to have committed the crime. Yet even this overpowering perfume could not conceal the smell. Kwong Thursday Ten rushed forward and warned, Throw that perfume bottle away now. Nya Sang Sumai. All right. I won't spray anymore. This is the smell of a drug addict. Trin Na Quan pointed directly at Kwong Thursday Tien and shouted, Lam Dao Tuan, you let someone with so little experience operate on my father? If anything happens, how will you answer to the Trin family? Lam Dao Tuan shot him a cold look. Of course I will bear all consequences. Well, why do you have to say that? You are nothing but a pawn of the Trin family. At that moment, another person entered. It was the Trin family's third daughter. Do you have no shame when you speak? Seeing her, Na Sang rushed over happily. Sister, dear sister, it's been so long. But the moment she approached, she received a hard slap that sent her reeling backward. Is this a nightclub? Why are you here, Na Sang? Na Sang held her cheek and said, Your concern really hurts, sister. The third daughter of the Trin family angrily said, You crazy girl, get up at once. I'm losing my patience. Yes, sister. This was Trin Na Hien, Trin Trey Van's eldest daughter. She had been 21 at the time of the incident and had a motive for committing the crime. After carefully observing every member of the Trin family, Kwong Thursday Tien had formed her own conclusions. Trin Na Hien said to Lam Dao Tuan, Only members of the Trin family are needed here. You can leave. Looking at the Trin family's precious children, Kwong Thursday Tien silently assessed them. These were the relatives Chairman Trin loved so dearly, yet not one of them had asked who shot him or why. No wonder he had wanted to pretend to be asleep. At that moment, Chairman Trin suddenly moved. Trin Na Hien rushed in front of Kwong Thursday Tien. Didn't you hear what I said? Why are you still here? Kwong Thursday Tien calmly replied, I am this patient's attending physician. I need to monitor his condition. Na Hien angrily shouted, Didn't you hear me? She raised her hand, about to slap Kwong Thursday Tien. Her eyes widened. Kwong Thursday Tien swiftly dodged, while someone grabbed Trin Na Hien's wrist. Lam Dao Tuan had stepped forward to stop her. Sister Na Hien, what are you doing? She is the doctor who saved the chairman's life. Na Hien immediately snapped back. So what? I won't say it a second time. Lam Dao Tuan remained firm. She cannot leave. She was the lead surgeon for this operation. The chairman has not regained consciousness yet, and she must continue to take responsibility for his care. Jingya Hein Snow, how rare. You are actually defending an insignificant nobody against me. Lam Dao Tuan replied, Everything I am doing is for Chairman Trin. Trin Na Hien continued, Surely you do not think I am negotiating with you. I do not just want her out of this room. I want her out of this hospital. Faced with Na Hien's unreasonable demand, Kwong Thursday Tien could only stand there silently. Suddenly, Chairman Trin woke up and coughed several times. Cough, cough. The Trin children immediately turned to him. Father, you're awake? He sat up and pulled off his oxygen mask. You useless children. Are you all so eager for me to die? Na Sang thought to herself, that damned old man. He then declared, I heard every word you said. Then he looked at Thursday Tien, and in turn dared to operate on me. You were very bold. I admire that. Since you were my lead surgeon, come to the Trin residence and become my personal physician. His two children immediately panicked. Father, how can you allow her exactly? Who does she think she is? He waved his hand wearily. Enough. I am tired. All of you get out. Na Sang then continued her phone call. I'm done here. I'll come over first. See you later. Lying in the hospital bed, Chairman Trin thought, that old fool heard everything we said. Every one of those ungrateful children is waiting for me to die. Just then, Butler Zhao arrived. Chairman, these are the leads and documents we have investigated. Chairman Trin looked at the butler and praised him. Very good. This little fish who has just appeared is quite interesting. The scene shifted to the Trin residence. The three children were sitting around the dining table, eating their fill. Eldest sister really knows how to sneak off and enjoy herself. There's so much to do at home. Father has just been discharged, and we still have to prepare for the group's 35th anniversary celebration. We're busy to death, but she ran off on vacation with the mayor's son. Then we can only work harder. The capable ones always have to do more. The ungrateful Na Sang was still absorbed in posting on social media. Why don't I live stream the 35th anniversary celebration? I can make those stupid employees sing and dance. As she spoke, she demonstrated with an air of professional flair. She really was a seasoned live streamer. Lam Dao Tuan's gaze turned cold. We should still ask the chairman for his opinion. Upon hearing him, Trin Na Quan looked at Lam Dao Tuan and questioned him. Dao Tuan, my father's health is no longer suitable for overexertion. Ultimately, the group should be left for us to manage. Though he heard this, Lam Dao Tuan remained calm. Second brother, there is no need for you to worry. The chairman will live to be 100. He has already decided to attend the group's 35th anniversary celebration. Hearing this, Trin Na Quan became furious. Impossible. My father was seriously injured. He should need at least a year in bed before recovering. He immediately turned to the nanny. Where is that doctor? I want to question her myself. She answered, she's outside the door. Then call her in at once. The door slowly opened. Kwang Thursday Tien entered under the scrutinizing gazes of the Trin family. Calmly, she said, Good evening, everyone. My name is Kwang Thursday Tien. From now on, I will be the chairman's personal physician. After speaking, Thursday Tien looked toward Dao Tuan. Dr. Kwang is here. Trin Na Quan raised his wine glass and said, My father is ill and stubbornly insists on attending the group's 35th anniversary celebration. As his doctor, I would like you to advise him. He needs to rest and recuperate. He should not attend this banquet. Leave the anniversary celebration entirely to me. Kwang Thursday Tien was slightly startled. The Trin Group's 35th anniversary celebration? The explosion all those years ago had happened on the very day of the Trin Group's anniversary celebration. That fateful event, the terrible night. Thursday Tien looked at Na Quan and said, You need not worry too much. I am a professional doctor. As long as I remain by the chairman's side throughout this period, he will be perfectly healthy enough to attend the celebration. A question suddenly arose in Thursday Tien's mind. The two anniversary celebrations must be closely connected somehow. Hearing her words, Na Sang covered her mouth and laughed mockingly. You really know how to brag, letting an old man who was shot walk around? Dr. Kwang, don't tell me you secretly gave my father some banned drugs. Hearing Na Sang mock her, Thursday Tien calmly countered, Banned drugs? Miss Na Sang, you seem to know quite a lot about them. The remark hit Na Sang squarely in the face. Her cheerful expression instantly darkened, and she froze for several seconds. Even a knife in her hand began to tremble. Then, without warning, she threw the knife at Thursday Tien. It flew straight toward Kwang Thursday Tien's eye. It seemed that Thursday Tien would be struck by the knife. Suddenly, Dao Tuan rushed forward and shouted, Dr. Kwang. Drops of blood began to fall to the floor. It seemed as though Thursday Tien's eye had been injured, but unexpectedly, she had raised her hand and caught the knife. The blade sliced her hand, and blood dripped down. Lam Dao Tuan was also stunned by Kwang Thursday Tien's lightning-fast reaction. He rushed over to shield her. Sister Na Sang, what are you doing? Na Sang folded her arms and acted unconcerned. What did you say? Who is your sister? Trin Na Quan, who had been watching all along, finally spoke. Lam Dao Tuan, it is not your place as an outsider to lecture members of the Trin family. Lam Dao Tuan turned to inspect Kwang Thursday Tien's injured hand. This wound is quite deep. Let me bandage it for you. The two then left. Na Sang stood there, furious. Those two eyesores are finally gone. Once Lam Dao Tuan and Kwang Thursday Tien had left, Trin Na Quan said, All right. I still need Dr. Kwang for a few more days. Try not to use that stuff for now, okay? There are outsiders here. Control yourself. Lam Dao Tuan took Kwang Thursday Tien back to treat her wound. He skillfully bandaged her hand in no time. Thank you. Thursday Tien asked, I did not expect you to be so skilled at bandaging wounds, Mr. Lam. Lam Dao Tuan replied, when I have time off, I sometimes race cars. I get injured from time to time, so I have learned from experience. I see. Suddenly, Lam Dao Tuan looked directly at Thursday Tien and said, Dr. Kwong, the Trin family is always like this. You must be careful from now on, understand? Hearing Lam Dao Tuan's warning, Kwong Thursday Tien fell into deep thought. She held her injured hand without saying a word. As she walked toward the door, Lam Dao Tuan did not forget to add, I'm only doing this for the chairman. Thursday Tien replied, no matter who you are doing it for, I should thank you. I'll return to my room now. Kwong Thursday Tien slowly made her way back to her room. She could not even explore every corner of this enormous house in a whole evening. It was truly huge. Taking the opportunity to observe the residence for useful information, she noticed a painting hanging on the wall and was slightly surprised. Who is this? She stood before a portrait containing all the family members and studied it in silence. Thursday Tien stared intently at the people in the portrait, unaware that someone was slowly approaching behind her to watch her. Then a voice called out, Dr. Kwong. Kwong Thursday Tien turned around in surprise. It was the Trin Residence's butler, Zhao Fu. He smiled and said, this is not the way to your room. Kwong Thursday Tien walked over and smiled at him. I just left Mr. Lam's room and got lost. Butler Zhao said, I see. I almost thought Dr. Kwong was overly curious about the Trin residence. Hearing the pointed remark, Kwong Thursday merely clenched her hand tighter, and blood continued to drip from it. Remembering her mother, Man Tin, Kwong Thursday Tien felt bitter inside. What exactly did he mean by overly curious? The next morning, Kwong Thursday Tien went to Trin Trevan's room. After checking his condition, she smiled and said, your condition has improved very well today. He replied, thanks to Dr. Kwong's highly professional surgery. For someone your age to become the lead surgeon at International Trin Hospital after such a successful operation is truly no simple feat. Kwong Thursday Tien sat down and changed his bandages. It is simply my duty. Trin Trevan looked up at her and said, I heard about what happened yesterday. My youngest daughter has been unruly since childhood and is spoiled by habit. Dr. Kwong, please do not hold it against her. Kwong Thursday Tien smiled in response. I'm actually rather envious. Your youngest daughter must have been pampered since childhood to develop such a personality, right? Besides, Director Lam helped me out yesterday, so it is fine. At the mention of Lam Dao Tuan, Trin Trevan praised him. Dao Tuan is a good child. He was injured while saving me this time as well. Dr. Kwong, please take care of him too. Tu Ten's my... Of course. Kwong Thursday Tien left the room. On her way back, she suddenly stopped and continued studying the large paintings hanging in the hall. Today, you are all celebrating, she silently concluded, while my family was burned alive. The culprit must be among you. It has to be. The person absent from the family photograph was the most suspicious. Kwong Thursday Tien stood by the window, contemplating who had acted. In front of her was Trin Na Quan, speaking on the phone downstairs. Trin Na Quan was the Trin family's eldest son, yet his position in the group was lower than that of Lam Dao Tuan, the adopted son. On the surface, he appeared to be a refined and friendly gentleman, but in secret he accepted bribes and sexually harassed employees. Kwong Thursday Tien went downstairs and played with a puppy. Hearing the voices of a person and a dog, Trin Na Quan noticed and turned to look. Will you play with me, little one? Woof, woof. He then said into his phone, do it that way. I'm hanging up now. Jingna Guan was Julie Scum. The more flaws he revealed, the more weaknesses he would have. Then she would start with him. Trin Na Quan walked over, raised his hand, and greeted her with a smile. Good morning, Dr. Kwong. In a courteous tone, he said, is your hand all right? I will have my younger sister apologize to you for yesterday. Kwong Thursday Tien looked upset. I do not know what I did to offend Miss Na Sang. I only want to work here steadily. Why does she hate me so much? As they walked, Trin Na Quan explained, she is crazy. Just stay away from her. He then showed concern for Kwong Thursday Tien. Dr. Kwong, have you gotten used to this place? Kwong Tu Ten notet apoding sati feet. It is much more comfortable than the hospital. He stared at her and said, speaking of which, Dr. Kwong, your surgery on my father this time displayed such outstanding talent that you stole all the limelight from the professor and deputy director. Kwong Thursday Tian looked flustered, cold sweat appearing on her brow. At the time, I put the patient first. I did not think about anything else. He teased her. Oh, it may be hard for you when you return to the hospital. You might even lose your position. Kwong Thursday Tian replied uneasily. Mr. Dao Tuan said he would help me. At the mention of Lam Dao Tuan, Trin Na Quan became angry. Who does he think he is? He is only an adopted son, a pawn of the Trin family. The Trin group belongs to the Trin family in the end. He has no share in it. Kwong Thursday Tian looked distressed. Then what should I do? He curled his lips into a lecherous smile and placed a hand on Kwong Thursday Tian's shoulder. You do not need to worry. This is nothing to me. An intern position, an attending physician position, even a department director position, none of that is a problem for me. Upon hearing that, Kwong Thursday Tian felt nothing but disgust. He is truly revolting. Yet she replied, it would be wonderful if you were willing to help me. He raised his hand and said, there is one condition. You must work for me. Hearing him, Kwong Thursday Tian understood at once. At last, he is showing his true colors. She immediately said, but I'm already working for the Trin family. He stepped closer and clarified, I mean working for me, not for the Trin family. Hearing this, Thursday Tian asked in confusion, what? He wore a wicked expression as he said, the chairman is old. This empire will soon have a new king. Thursday Tian replied uneasily. Although the chairman has just undergone surgery, he is recovering very quickly. Living to 100 will not be a problem. As she spoke, she tried to avoid him. He leaned close and whispered in her ear, so all you need to do is, at the words of this disgusting man, Kwong Thursday Tian went rigid. Startled, she raised both hands to cover her mouth. What? Yet he continued with that sly smile. Are you scared now? With just one word from me, you'll be blacklisted by the entire industry. No hospital will dare hire you again. When you work, you need to know how to read the situation. That's what makes someone sensible. Dr. Kwong answered resolutely. I'm a doctor. I cannot do such beastly things. Furious, he rushed forward and grabbed Dr. Kwong by the throat. Too late. It's not up to you anymore. His grip tightened as he lowered his voice. Now that you know my purpose, do you really think I'll let you walk out of here alive? Dr. Kwong looked frightened. I understand. Yet she thought to herself, then let's see which one of us dies first. Satisfied, he said, then don't disappoint me. The entire confrontation had been carefully watched by Trin Na Sang from upstairs. Angrily, she muttered, cockroaches should stay obediently in the garbage. Crawling around everywhere is truly disgusting. Dr. Kwong headed toward the stairs and saw Director Lam coming down. She greeted him. Good afternoon, Director Lam. He smiled in return. Trin Na Quan is not a good man. Don't get too close to him, Dr. Kwong explained. We just happened to run into each other and exchange a few words. As he went downstairs, he coldly said, in any case, I've warned you. Watch out for yourself. That night, there was a knock outside Dr. Kwong's room. She opened the door and found a masked man holding a tray with mosquito-repellent incense. He said, there are many mosquitoes indoors during the summer. This room has been vacant for a long time, and the master instructed me to burn mosquito incense for you. Dr. Kwong replied, there really are a lot of mosquitoes. It is rather bothersome. Please come in, and thank you for your trouble. He entered, then suddenly turned around and locked the door. He explained, a sealed room makes it more effective. Then he lit the mosquito incense in a burner. The scent immediately rushed into Dr. Kwong's nose. Why does this smell seem a little strange? Suddenly, he stared at her with an exceedingly sinister look in his eyes. Strange, perhaps, but it smells quite nice, doesn't it? He smiled. Haha, that's because it was specially prepared that way. Dr. Kwong suddenly began to feel unwell. Raising a hand to her head, she said, why do I suddenly feel dizzy? The scent must be too strong. She said to him, I have a bit of a headache. I'll step outside for a moment. I'll leave this place to you. Dr. Kwong walked over and reached for the doorknob. Suddenly, he lunged at her, seized her shoulder, and violently pulled her backward. Showing his true colors as a monster, he dragged Dr. Kwong back, but she abruptly collapsed. With unfocused eyes, Dr. Kwong murmured, what's happening? He carried her to the bed and reached for her body. This stuff isn't bad. It works very quickly. He took off his mask and used his phone to record Dr. Kwong while she was incapacitated. 1, 2, 3. Several clear photos were taken. He slowly began unbuttoning his shirt, his face full of excitement. Let me see just how effective it is. Suddenly, the restrained Dr. Kwong mumbled a few incoherent words and struggled to escape him. Her limbs flailed as she clawed his neck. The deep scratch left a long, bleeding wound, startling him and twisting his face in pain. Overcome by rage, he lunged forward and grabbed Dr. Kwong by the throat. "You little bitch. Damn it, you don't know what's good for you." Dr. Kwong cried out helplessly, "Help! Someone save me!" Her unfocused eyes slowly closed, and her breath and voice gradually weakened. "Help! Save me!" At that critical moment, loud knocking came from outside. Cold sweat broke out on his face as he looked toward the door. Someone was knocking from outside. It was Director Lam. He called into the room. "Dr. Kwong, there are some things I need to discuss with you." Dr. Kwong tried desperately to answer, but his hand was clamped over her mouth, preventing her from speaking. He whispered, "If you don't want to die, shut up. Otherwise, you'll regret it." The knocking continued. While being restrained, Dr. Kwong spotted a glass beside her and struggled to reach for it. After much effort, Dr. Kwong finally touched the glass. It fell to the floor with a sharp crash that echoed through the room. Hearing the strange noise inside, Director Lam realized something was wrong. He knocked repeatedly. "Dr. Kwong, are you all right? Are you okay?" After struggling for a while, Dr. Kwong suddenly lunged forward and bit the thug. In excruciating pain, he screamed madly, "You filthy bitch! How dare you bite me?" Sensing trouble, Director Lam rammed the door open and shouted as he entered. The moment he rushed in, he saw the young man restraining Dr. Kwong. "Help me," she cried. Director Lam charged forward and beat the man mercilessly. The thug pleaded, "Don't hit me. Don't hit me. Save me. I was wrong. I was wrong. I'll confess everything." Dr. Kwong lay on the bed, exhaling shakily. "That scent. It seems to be an aphrodisiac." Meanwhile, Director Lam was still punching the man. Grabbing him by the collar, Director Lam demanded, "You're not a worker from the Trin residence. Who exactly are you?" The man fished the drug out of his pocket and threw it straight into Director Lam's face. Hit by the powder, Director Lam covered his face and coughed several times. The powder scattered everywhere, and while Director Lam was distracted, the thug immediately leaped out the window and escaped. After calming down, Director Lam went to check on Dr. Kwong. "Dr. Kwong, are you all right? Are you hurt?" The drug was beginning to take effect, and she said, "Hot. I'm so hot." Seeing Dr. Kwong's unusual condition, Director Lam leaned closer to examine her. "Do you need to go to the hospital?" As soon as he finished speaking, Dr. Kwong reached up and touched his face. Her strange actions startled him. Their hearts pounded wildly. Director Lam's cool face made Dr. Kwong feel a little better. "This coolness feels so good." The two drew close. Director Lam asked, "Dr. Kwong, try to stay conscious." But Dr. Kwong could no longer control herself. She threw herself at Director Lam. "Help me. I feel so awful. I can't endure it anymore." Director Lam froze for several seconds, his entire body stiffening as cold sweat poured down his face. The drug was beginning to affect him too. What was that powder? His head hurt terribly, and it was also intensifying the desire inside him. Unable to bear it any longer, Dr. Kwong slowly began taking off her clothes. Dazed, she mumbled, "It's unbearably hot. I can't take it anymore." Sweat poured down Director Lam's face as he swallowed hard. "Lam Dao Duan, Zhu, you need to get a hold of yourself." Before Director Lam could calm himself down, Dr. Kwong lunged forward and kissed him. He jolted in shock, his eyes wide open as she pressed against him again and again. Director Lam could no longer control himself. This was bad. He could not endure it any longer. So he decided to give in. His hands slowly roamed over Dr. Kwong's body, and what was bound to happen happened. The two became entangled, exchanging passionate kisses. Lost in each other's eyes, they gave themselves to one another for the first time. Their fierce lovemaking continued relentlessly, neither willing to yield. Director Lam was skilled, while Dr. Kwong was no less passionate. Then came a powerful climax, everything spilling over as their emotions erupted and carried them both into ecstasy. The scene shifted to a bar where a group of young men and women were partying. "Tonight, drinks are on me. Have all the fun you want. Long live Sister Sang. Sister Sang is amazing. Sister Sang is #1. A blonde-haired man came up behind Trin Na Sang. "What's got you so happy today, Sister Sang? You're partying like crazy." Na Sang turned around with a smile. I have to thank you for helping me take care of that matter. He hugged her and gave a lecherous grin. It wasn't easy, you know. How does Miss Trin plan to reward me? She struck a seductive pose. I won't keep you waiting. I'll repay you in full. The scene returned to the following morning. It was 8 o'clock, and the sun had already risen over the house. After a passionate and intense night, Dr. Kwong was in the bathroom, wanting to wash everything from her body. What happened last night had been entirely unexpected. Still, there had been a blessing amid the misfortune. She had encountered Director Lam. At least he was not a murderer, but some kind of banned substance had been added to that incense. She had been far too careless. It had not seemed like something Director Lam had done. Trin Na Quan still needed her to work for him, so there was no reason for him to do such a thing. Dr. Kwong's expression darkened. Then the only people who could have gotten their hands on that substance are those vipers from the Trin family. It must have been Trin Na Sang. Looking into the mirror, Dr. Kwong angrily said, "Every last one of those Trin bastards is rotten. I need to send them all to hell as soon as possible." Dr. Kwong came out and patted Director Lamb's face. "Good heavens, you slept all night and you're still asleep? Hurry up. We need to go to the hotel venue today." Director Lam, naked except for a blanket, woke up in a daze. His mind was spinning, and he still looked intoxicated. The two got into the car and headed to the venue. They sat facing in opposite directions, and the atmosphere was rather awkward. Director Lam spoke first. About last night. Seeing his embarrassment, Dr. Kwong replied, "Let's just consider it an accident." Director Lam rested his chin on his hand. "I don't mean anything else. I just think last night was very strange. I'm not someone who loses control of himself." Hearing that, Dr. Kwong turned to him. "So you noticed it too? There must have been something mixed into the incense, something like a hallucinogen or perhaps an aphrodisiac." Dr. Kwong held up the incense pouch. "We'll need to test it to identify the exact ingredients." Director Lam added suspiciously, "The only person who would use something like that could be Trin Na Sang." Dr. Kwong nodded. "I'll remember this debt. I definitely won't let her get away with it." Hearing Dr. Kwong's words, Director Lam was somewhat startled. "I warned you about them long ago." Yet his mind was still replaying scenes from yesterday. That kiss had been so soft. He cleared his throat and said, "I told you to stay away from Trin Na Quan. No matter what he asks you to do, don't agree to it." Dr. Kwong turned to him. "To tell you the truth, I refused him. He asked me to help him kill the chairman." Director Lam was so startled that he slammed on the brakes, making the tires screech across the road. Cold sweat poured down Director Lam's face. "Why you?" Dr. Kwong reassured him. "Of course I wouldn't be foolish enough to do that. I won't help him commit such a heartless and immoral act." Director Lam angrily clenched his fist. "I didn't expect him to be this impatient." Dr. Kwong turned toward him and said, "Honestly, I find it rather interesting. He wants to kill his biological father, while you, his adopted son, want to protect the chairman's life. Then again, it makes sense. They have always viewed you as a competitor and fear that you'll inherit a share of the estate. They've made moves against you many times this year, haven't they? If the chairman is gone, it will be even harder for you to fight them." Director Lam grew thoughtful and placed his hand on the dashboard. "It's not that simple. If he dared tell you his purpose directly, he must have something important to use against you." He took out a card and handed it to Dr. Kwong. "Why don't you work with me?" Hearing his proposal, Dr. Kwong seemed to understand something. "You want me to be your eyes and ears?" Director Lam looked pleased. "That's right. We can play along and secretly cooperate. I'm sincere about this." Holding the card, Dr. Kwong thought to herself, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend. For now, I can use him to keep those 3 siblings in check." Then, happy cooperation, the two arrived at the venue. Meanwhile, Trin Na Sang was happily posting pictures on social media. "Isn't that incredible?" While she was engrossed in it, her phone rang. She answered, "Oh, why haven't you sent the rest of the photos yet?" In the middle of speaking, Na Sang suddenly screamed in alarm. "What?" Her loud voice startled the 2 young men nearby. "Why are you shouting like that? You nearly scared the soul out of me." Na Sang turned back with a smile. "Ah, it's nothing. Nothing at all. I just overreacted." Then she lowered her voice and spoke into the phone. "What happened? Why is that? Didn't everything go smoothly? You already sent 2 photos, didn't you?" The man on the other end replied, "I was discovered. I could only run first." Na Sang asked, "You were discovered? You didn't tell them about me, did you?" "Of course not. That guy couldn't catch me." She cursed. "Damn it. You can't even handle such a small matter properly." "Do you know who hit you?" He replied. Judging by the way he was dressed, he didn't look like one of the household staff. At those words, a thought flashed through Na Sang's mind. Not a servant? Then who was he? Just then, Dr. Kwong arrived from behind. Someone called out, "Dr. Kwong, over here." Seeing someone approach, Na Sang said, "I'm hanging up now. Dr. Kwong vit jinya quan wit as my." "Good morning, Mr. Na Kwon." But before she could even reach them, Na Sang cut in. "Dr. Kwong, you arrived so late. You must have slept very well last night." Dr. Kwong was furious at the taunt, but she forced herself to remain calm. Then footsteps approached. Director Lam gave him a cold look. "Why are you all standing around here?" Trin Na Kwon became annoyed when he heard that. "Who else would we be waiting for if not you? If you'd been any later, I would have had to report you missing to the police." Director Lam stepped up to him. "What? You need me here just to arrange the venue." Provoked by Director Lam's sarcasm, Trin Na Kwon angrily moved toward him, ready to fight. You've got some nerve." Seeing the two men about to clash, Dr. Kwong quickly raised a hand to stop them. She hurried forward with a smile. "When I came in, I saw the staff working in perfect order. Only a capable supervisor like Mr. Trin could have organized everything so well. I have much to learn from you." Dr. Kwong's acting skills were truly worthy of a perfect score. "Besides, this is my first time attending such a grand occasion as the Trin Group's 35th anniversary celebration. I was afraid I might not handle things properly, so I've been feeling rather anxious." Praised by a beautiful woman, Trin Na Kwon proudly gestured with his hand. "Dr. Kwong, you flatter me. It's nothing at all. You don't need to worry about the venue." He called toward someone nearby. "Manager Fat, come here quickly." He raised a hand in introduction. "This is the longest-serving employee at our Trin Grand Hotel. He knows every detail about the hotel." Dr. Kwong immediately looked impressed. Supervisor Trin, having someone so meticulous and reliable truly makes people feel safe. Director Lam, standing nearby, was speechless. She really was the queen of flattery. Having watched their dazzling performance, Trin Na Sang could no longer stand it. She rushed over, grabbed Trin Na Kwon's hand, and pulled him away. "Brother, come with me. I have something to ask you." Dr. Kwong went over to Manager Fat. "Then I'll trouble you to show me around and tell me about the ceremony schedule as well." He made a welcoming gesture. "This way, please." Dr. Kwong quietly calculated to herself, "I hope there is something here that will not disappoint me." Director Lam watched her closely, completely at a loss for words. The elevator began ascending to the upper floors. Manager Fat invited Dr. Kwong into a room. "Dr. Kwong, that is roughly the schedule." Dr. Kwong turned and asked, "Is the venue still being arranged? We can't conduct an on-site inspection, and there are still many things that aren't clear." Manager Fat immediately replied, "I'm afraid there's nothing I can do about that. We can only understand the specific situation after the venue has been fully arranged." Dr. Kwong hesitated. "Then are there any photos or video materials I could look at? They would at least be useful for reference." After thinking for a moment, he said, "There are. Please come with me." Dr. Kwong said happily, "That would be great." The two entered the archives room, where unauthorized personnel were prohibited from entering. He walked to a shelf of materials and pointed. "These are videos from the group's celebration ceremonies. Except for the first few years, nearly all of them are here." Upon hearing Manager Fat's introduction, Dr. Kwong suddenly realized this was exactly what she had been looking for. Dr. Kwong immediately chose the recording of the 15th anniversary celebration. "This tape is from 25 years ago. Do you really need to look that far back?" Faced with his question, she smiled and replied, "Of course. Generally speaking, milestone anniversary celebrations like this are more elaborate and detailed, aren't they?" Her explanation sounded reasonable, and he nodded. "You make a good point, Dr. Kwong. I still have work to do. If you need anything, just let me know." "Thank you, Manager Fat. Please go ahead with your work. I can watch it myself." Dr. Kwong inserted the videotape into the player. The explosion had happened not long after the ceremony. The killer must have left some traces while coming and going. After watching the footage for 2 hours, Dr. Kwong carefully observed every action of the people at the banquet. Watching everyone raise their glasses in celebration, Dr. Kwong suddenly noticed something. It's her. She enlarged the image. Why did Trin Na Kwon miss the group photo because of this? It doesn't seem that simple. Since the detail was unclear, Dr. Kwong immediately saved it to her phone. She needed to ask Manager Fat who the employee was that had argued with Trin Na Kwon. As she walked down the stairs, Dr. Kwong kept thinking about the footage. Then she heard someone groaning below. The sound echoed throughout the stairwell. Below, two people were entangled with each other, moving in a way no child should have to see. Oh, come on. This again. Dr. Kwong felt extremely awkward. Why would people be doing that here in broad daylight? She decided to take another route. But just as she was about to leave, she heard someone mention her name. Why were they talking about her? Hearing someone mention her made Dr. Kwong freeze. Why did that voice sound so familiar? Do you have your eye on Dr. Kwong? It turned out that Trin Na Sang was below, clinging to the young man. The moment Dr. Kwong heard that, she was stunned. It was Jingya Guan and Jingya Sang. She never expected the two of them to be involved in something so depraved. She took out her phone and photographed the scene as evidence. But she had forgotten to turn off the flash, alerting the two people below. Trin Na Kwon looked toward the source of the light in panic and shouted, "Who's there?" Dr. Kwong's expression changed. This was bad. She absolutely could not let herself be discovered. She quickly ran away, while Trin Na Kwon hurried up after hearing her footsteps. Yet when he opened the door, all he saw was emptiness. There was no one there. He looked around for a long while, sweat covering his face. There's no one here. Did I hear wrong? What he did not know was that nearby, Director Lam had pulled Dr. Kwong into a concealed spot. Held in his arms, she was quite surprised. Why was it him? He gestured for her to stay quiet so they would not alert Trin Na Kwon. Outside, Trin Na Kwon was about to leave when he suddenly stopped. He cast a dangerous glance behind him and muttered, "Something's not right." He slowly walked toward the nearby janitor's closet, then decisively pulled open its door. His action made Dr. Kwong, hidden inside, break out in a cold sweat. But all Trin Na Kwon saw were countless cleaning supplies. There was no one else there. He narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Did I really hear wrong? Just as he was about to step farther inside and inspect the room, Trin Na Sang called out to him. "Hello, baby." She approached him coquettishly. "Didn't you have everyone working in the front? No one will come here. You must have heard wrong." As she spoke, she wrapped herself around his arm. "Don't overthink it. I still haven't had enough fun yet." Although Trin Na Kwon left, he remained highly alert. "Fine. Later, I'll go to the surveillance room and check everything." Trin Na Sang linked her arm through his. "What are you worried about? Didn't you already turn off all the cameras in this area?" Their footsteps gradually faded away. Only then did Dr. Kwong, hiding in the closet, finally lose patience. "It's too cramped. I can barely breathe." Director Lam spoke softly, just loud enough for her to hear. "Hold on a little longer. Once they leave, we can get out." With no other choice, she held onto him tightly because their hiding place was so narrow. She gave a quiet acknowledgement. Meanwhile, at Chairman Trin's residence, his trusted man handed over the information found on the tablet and reported, "Chairman, these are the clues regarding your shooting that Director Lam uncovered. He sent them for us to review." After reading them, Chairman Trin murmured, "Just as I expected. I suppose you've seen it too." After reading it, the man's expression darkened. "The killer is dead?" Chairman Trin furrowed his brow, an ominous look on his aged face. "They acted quickly. Azure Cloud Manor is the group's newly built elite club. Only family members and the manor's internal staff knew of your itinerary to Azure Cloud Manor." The man immediately offered his deduction. Anyone capable of arranging this in advance would have to be a key figure. The coincidence is that as soon as Director Lam found the killer died. Aside from several bags of cash in the room, the killer had no relatives or friends. But blood and hair tests found that he had taken a large amount of methamphetamine before his death. Among the drugs was a new kind that is not yet on the market. And that happens to be the type Miss Sang has been using most frequently lately. Could Trin Na Sang be behind this? Chairman Trin immediately rejected the idea. It wasn't her. She's already in trouble. How could she possibly have such ambitions? There's no need to investigate further. I already know who it is. The man voiced his second guess. Could it be Director Lam? You just gave him management authority over Azure Cloud Manor, and then this happened. Moreover, he has been conducting the investigation from beginning to end. Wouldn't it be easy for him to cover it up? Chairman Trin did not agree. He rejected it again. It wasn't him. I raised Tuan myself. He is not the kind of person who would do such a thing. But the next sentence left Chairman Trin speechless. What if Director Lam knows about what happened that year? That evening, as usual, Dr. Kwong and Director Lam once again spent the night together. Exhausted, she panted and said, "Don't think too much about it. The medicine in our bodies needs at least 2 or 3 days to metabolize. We're only helping each other." Hearing this made him unhappy. After contemplating for a moment, he finally asked, "Does this hurt?" There was a large scar on Dr. Kwong's left shoulder. She stared at the ceiling and replied indifferently, "I was accidentally burned when I was little." She turned over, changing the subject, and pointed at the long scar on his chest. "What about you? What happened here? It looks like a surgical scar." He sat up and began telling her about his past. "It's a long story. When I was 5, Tam Foods, the company my father managed, was involved in a serious food safety incident. The incident caused a huge uproar in the market and public opinion for a long time. The company was sealed as a result. Tam Foods was reported to have a serious food safety scandal. One of its products contained toxins exceeding legal limits, causing dozens of people to develop cancer or die of poisoning. At that time, our home was surrounded by residents and reporters, 24 hours a day. My mother worried about my safety, so she personally took me to and from school. And that was when the most painful thing happened. One day after school, reporters chased my mother's car. To avoid them, she drove over the speed limit. Then there was an accident. All that remained was a sea of blazing red flames. Whenever he thought of it, his face was full of regret. I was saved, but my mother died. This scar was left from the emergency treatment." He continued painfully. "Later, my father passed away as well." She had not expected his childhood to have been so tragic, and her sympathy grew stronger. Dr. Kwong gently caressed his cheek in comfort. "You must have suffered terribly back then." He nodded lightly and said, "Yes. But fortunately, someone gave me tremendous encouragement." She gently reassured him, "Your parents must be happy to know that you are living well." This time, he did not answer. He simply fell silent. Early the next morning, Dr. Kwong took the image of the person she was looking for on her phone and asked Manager Fat at the Trin residence, "Manager Fat, do you remember this employee?" After looking at the image on her phone, Manager Fat politely replied, "I'm very sorry, Dr. Kwong. It has been too long. I truly don't remember." Unwilling to give up, she asked, "Do you have a list of the employees from that year?" Manager Fat tactfully refused again. "It has been too long, and our records here are regularly disposed of." He then asked, "Is there something important about the person you are looking for, Dr. Kwong?" Dr. Kwong put away her phone and forced a smile. "No, it's nothing." She felt deeply disappointed. She had finally found a breakthrough. Could it really end here? Meanwhile, everyone at Trin Group was busy preparing for a reception banquet. In a small room not far away, a waitress trembled as she pleaded, "Manager Trin, please don't do this. I still have work to do." Trin Na Quan pressed the waitress against the wall. He picked up her name tag and examined it with interest. "Oh, a new employee? No wonder I've never seen you before." The waitress was named Fat Lalu, a new employee who had only recently begun working at Trin Grand Hotel. He gave a lecherous smile. "Otherwise, I wouldn't have forgotten such a cute face." Seeing that he was about to do something improper, Fat Lalu fearfully pushed Trin Na Quan away. "Please behave yourself. There are many people here. If I call for help, do you think you'll still have any reputation left?" Angered by her shove, Trin Na Quan loosened his tie and sneered, "I think you're the one who doesn't understand the situation." "Reputation? Everyone will only think that a new employee like you is trying to seduce the heir of the group." Fat Lalu was so aggrieved that she nearly cried. "You're twisting the truth." Trin Na Quan pressed his advantage and tempted her. "So long as you know what's good for you, we can both be happy. Aren't money and status what people like you want? I'm giving you an opportunity." As he spoke, he stroked Fat Lili's face. She trembled in fear, repeatedly saying, "Stay away from me. Stay away." At that critical moment, Manager Fat arrived and broke the deadlock. "Manager Trin, Miss Sang has been looking for you everywhere. It seems urgent." Seeing someone arrive, Trin Na Quan immediately put on a proper appearance. He straightened his clothes and smiled. "Oh, where is she?" Manager Fat replied, "She should be in the dining hall." As soon as he finished speaking, Trin Na Quan turned and headed there. Once he was gone, Fat Lalu threw herself into Manager Fat's arms and burst into tears. "Dad!" Manager Fat gently patted his daughter's shoulder to comfort her. The father's eyes narrowed dangerously as he pondered something. Meanwhile, Dr. Kwong had searched through the files for a long time without finding anything. She sighed in frustration and rubbed her forehead. After looking all morning, she had found nothing useful. Trin Na Hien had not appeared at the opening ceremony, so she could not make a move for the time being. Filled with questions, she thought that the breakthrough still lay with Trin Na Quan and that employee. What exactly had happened between Trin Na Quan and that employee? Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Knock, knock. She composed herself before saying, "Come in." Seeing that it was Manager Fat, she was rather surprised. He approached and handed her a small slip of paper. "Miss Kwong, I suddenly remembered the employee you asked about this morning. This is her address." Dr. Kwong had spent an entire day looking for information without success, yet Manager Fat had solved everything as soon as he arrived. She happily accepted the slip of paper. The next day, she followed the address Manager Fat had given her. It should be in this alley. She went to room 68 of the alley. She knocked on the door. "Is anyone home?" Hearing movement, an elderly woman cracked open the door and asked warily, "Who are you looking for?" Dr. Kwong politely asked, "Are you Trong Lan An, who once worked at Trin Grand Hotel?" The woman startled and asked harshly, "Who are you? Why have you come here?" Dr. Kwong said expectantly, "I would like to ask you about some matters concerning Trin Group from 25 years ago." The woman's expression immediately darkened, and she loudly denied it. "I have nothing to do with that place. Don't come bothering me again. Otherwise, I'll call the police." Hearing the commotion inside, a man came out. "Mom, what's wrong?" With one glance, Dr. Kwong recognized his condition. Bluish-purple lips and unusually long limbs, typical signs of heart disease. When the mother saw her son come out, she hurriedly slammed the door shut. Dr. Kwong could only hear her voice from inside. "It's nothing, nothing. Someone knocked on the wrong door. Go back to your room and rest." Dr. Kwong sighed. It seemed this would be much more difficult than she had imagined. Perhaps there was more to this than met the eye. Should she ask Manager Fat about it? As she walked down the stairs to leave, she spotted a group of thuggish men carrying clubs heading upstairs. As soon as their leader arrived, he kicked the door open with force. "You really thought you could avoid us? Stop talking nonsense and pay up." The elderly woman fearfully gathered up the little loose change she had left. "Brother Ho, please take this money first. Give us a few more days for the rest. We'll find a way to pay you back." Without another word, the thug slapped her hard. The loose bills scattered everywhere as his curses rang out. "Damn it, do you take me for a beggar?" Her son rushed out to defend her. "You bastards, don't touch my mother." A curly-haired man charged forward and struck the son. "Beating a sickly brat like you to death would be easier than crushing an ant. You still dare to reason with us?" The commotion echoed through the corridor. "Please stop hitting him. Q Hatch, are you all right?" The noise immediately drew Dr. Kwong's attention. It was Truong Lanon's home. Inside, the mother knelt and cried, begging, "Brother Ho, please show us mercy. We truly have no money to treat you Hatch. I've spent all my savings from the past few years. Please give us a few more days." "All right." The thug grabbed the mother by the hair and pulled her up, laughing mockingly. "No money? But you have blood, don't you? I'll take you to do some good deeds." Her son, pinned beneath someone's foot, looked at his mother in agony. "Let go of my mother, you scum." At that moment, Dr. Kwong suddenly turned back. Standing in the doorway, she shouted, "Stop! I've already called the police. I advise you to leave now, or the police will be here any moment." The leader was displeased that someone had interfered. "Who are you? Are you looking to die? Stop meddling in other people's business." Dr. Kwong was not afraid of the thugs. Her phone was still dialing the police as she warned them. "The police are already on their way. You can either leave immediately or stay here and wait for them to arrest you." The leader snorted coldly and cursed. "Bitch, do you think I grew up on empty threats?" As soon as he finished speaking, police sirens wailed below the building. They had not expected Dr. Kwong to actually call the police. Cursing under his breath, the man spat out his cigarette. "Damn it, what rotten luck." The group hurried away, but before leaving, the leader turned back to warn her. "You got away this time, but there will be a next time. Let's see how long you can keep hiding." One of the underlings urged him, "Boss, we need to go. The cops are here." The mother helped her son to his feet and looked gratefully at Dr. Kwong. "Miss, I'm truly sorry, and thank you. Please come inside for some water." Dr. Kwong thought to herself, "Since I came all this way, I have to find the information I need, no matter what." Suddenly, the young man had an attack of coughing. Seeing this, she was suddenly delighted. Perhaps this could be the breakthrough she needed to uncover some clues. Once inside, she pretended to be concerned and asked, "What illness does your son have?" He doesn't look well. The mother sorrowfully explained. Chu Hatch had heart surgery once before, but it was not very effective. Wiping away her tears, she continued. His condition has worsened recently. He keeps getting fevers. The hospital said it was myocarditis. Many doctors said his heart was in such poor condition that they were unwilling to risk operating on him. Dr. Kwong nodded in understanding and asked, "May I see his medical records?" The mother did not conceal anything and placed all the records before her. "They're all here. Please look through them." Dr. Kwong carefully reviewed them. At a glance, she spotted the problem. Numerous growths had attached themselves to the aortic and mitral valves, with swelling around the valves severely damaging the heart's normal structure. This condition required enlargement and reconstruction of both the aortic and mitral valves, along with transposition surgery between the mitral and aortic valves. After organizing the details in her mind, she set down the records and said, "This truly is a world-class, difficult surgery. No wonder so many doctors refused." For some reason, the mother felt a flicker of hope. "Miss, are you a doctor?" she asked expectantly. "Can you operate on Chu Hatch?" Dr. Kwong was not arrogant. Although she had once assisted her mentor with this type of surgery, she had only been an assistant at the time. Sighing, she replied, "This operation is extremely difficult. I am not 100% certain." Feeling that was still not accurate enough, she amended, "No, not even 80%. Knowing that the woman before her might be her son's final hope, the mother dropped to her knees and tearfully begged, "Please save my Chu Hatch." Afraid Dr. Kwong would refuse, she quickly added, "If you agree, I'll tell you what happened that day." Dr. Kwong helped the mother up. "Please stand up. I don't want to know what happened that day, but the success rate for this operation is too low. Even if I perform it, there's a very high chance that he will not survive the operating table." Heartbroken, the mother repeated her words, He won't survive the operation, but I'm willing." The young man supported his frail body as he came out, coughing, and interrupted them. "I'm willing to take the gamble. I'm just waiting to die anyway, so I might as well risk it." His contemplative eyes seemed to hide countless secrets. "I can tell you everything that happened back then, but I have one condition." Dr. Kwong looked at him sternly. "What condition?" Knowing she would agree, the young man got straight to the point. "I heard everything you said earlier. It looks like the Trin family has hurt you too. I have some evidence in my possession." The mother rushed over to stop him. "Diech, no." He shook her off and shouted, "Mom, at a time like this, we never avenged Dad back then, and now I'm about to die too. Do you want us to take this secret to the grave and face Dad?" Hearing that, the mother froze as though she had suddenly awakened. She sighed and wiped away her tears. "You're right. Do as you think is best." The mother warmly invited Dr. Kwong to sit at the table and discuss it. Her son sat beside her and calmly asked, "Do you know about the food safety scandal that shocked the entire country years ago?" Dr. Kwong was startled. That was Director Lam's father's case, but it happened after the explosion. What could the two cases have to do with each other? When she did not answer, the young man lowered his head and began, "My father's name was Chow Dong-doi. He was once the warehouse manager at Tam Foods. But in reality, Chairman Trin had planted him in the Tam Foods factory as an informant." Dr. Kwong's eyes widened in shock. "What? That happened?" Ignoring the change in her expression, the young man continued steadily, "I was still in school at the time, but I was not much of a student. I failed the college entrance exam 3 times. My health was terrible too. I was constantly hospitalized and undergoing surgery. Our family simply could not afford the costs. But by coincidence, Chairman Trin approached my father at that time. He offered to cover all my medical expenses and send me to an elite private school, where I became classmates with Trin Na Quan." Dr. Kwong frowned and sneered. "There is no way he did that out of pure kindness." The young man nodded in agreement with Dr. Kwong's judgment. Unable to contain his pain, he covered his face and cried. "That's right. He asked my father to do something for him. He asked my father." His voice trembled violently. "He asked my father to poison Tam Foods products after they passed inspection." Unable to contain her fury at this shocking revelation, she sprang to her feet. "What? So the food factory scandal was not caused by negligent management, but was deliberately orchestrated?" Her hand clenched into a fist on the table in anger. This meant Director Lam's father had been framed and died unjustly. The young man blamed himself for everything, trembling as he sobbed. It was all my fault. All of it. If I had passed the college entrance exam, if I had not been sick, then my father never would have. The mother rushed over and embraced her son, comforting him. Hatch, this is not your fault. It is your father's and my fault for not giving you a healthy body. Watching the mother and son cling to each other in self-reproach, Dr. Kwong could only sigh. This had truly been an unexpected development. She continued with her own question. Then what were you and Trin Na Quan arguing about at the Trin Grand Hotel? He told me to destroy the evidence I had. He even threatened that my widowed mother and I would not be allowed to live in peace. Hearing this, she understood somewhat. Ah, is this the evidence you wanted to exchange with me? After calming down, the young man nodded. That's right. My father died in a car accident in the second year after the incident. A man who had never even touched alcohol was somehow convicted of drunk driving. After my father died, my mother and I accidentally discovered that he had kept a diary. Inside was an uncashed check, as well as the complete truth written in his own hand. Every page detailed how Chairman Trin had ordered my father to poison the food. That was when I learned what my father had done. Supporting his mother, the young man continued calmly. Because of this, I suspect Chairman Trin murdered my father. I got into a fight with Trin Na Quan at school, and that was when he accidentally learned about the diary my father left behind. He has tried every possible way to take the evidence from my mother and me. The mother added, back then, Trin Na Quan forced me to burn the diary. I listened to him, but fortunately Hatch snatched it back in time, so we managed to keep it. Dr. Kwong realized how important the evidence was. Suppressing her excitement, she asked, based on what you have said, this evidence is enough for the police to open a case against Chairman Trin, correct? At her question, the young man suddenly fell silent. The mother trembled all over and spoke with shame in her voice. Hatch's father truly made a terrible mistake, but the mother and son held each other and wept through their pain and guilt. But we still have to go on living. Once this is made public, Hatch will become known as a murderer's son. We do not know what to do. Dr. Kwong could only watch them in silence. She knew that everyone had their own fears and selfishness. Though they were wrong, they had no other choice. After leaving the mother and son's home, Dr. Kwong went up to the rooftop and gazed sadly into the distance. She had thought she would soon find the person responsible for the explosion and settle her family's old score, but she was still stuck where she started. In the freezing cold, she idly flicked the lighter in her hand. She did not know whether she should feel happy or sad for the man she had spent the night with. Fortunately, there was still evidence that could bring Chairman Trin down. Director Lam, you never expected this, did you? The man you respected most was the enemy who killed your biological father. Rain began to fall outside, and the temperature dropped sharply. Yet in a certain room, the atmosphere was the complete opposite, far hotter than outside. After their workout together, Director Lam asked with a flushed face, you were really enthusiastic today. Is it still the lingering effect of the medicine? Dr. Kwong, her face flushed and full of vitality, changed the subject. There is something I need your help with. Director Lam's wandering hand still refused to stop as he gently asked, what do you need me to do? I need a place where I can perform surgery, but the Trin family cannot find out. Gazing at her with infatuation, he asked meaningfully, and what do I get in return? Dr. Kwong replied cryptically, after the operation succeeds, I will tell you. Without thinking further, he immediately agreed. No problem. He continued tempting her. Then let's do it one more time. And so the two of them threw themselves into another passionate night. The next day, at the hospital, Dr. Kwong covered her mouth with her hand and thanked the man across from her in the changing room. Director Han, thank you so much for lending me the operating room. Dr. Han adjusted his glasses and smiled kindly. Just call me Han, Senator, of course. I would not refuse anything Tuan Tuan asked of me. After examining the patient and reviewing the medical records, Dr. Han gave his assessment. The surgery is indeed difficult, but do not worry. The hospital's best surgical team and I will assist you throughout the procedure. Dr. Kwong bowed gratefully. Thank you so much. Dr. Han helped her up and said calmly, I also feel fortunate to be involved in such a difficult operation, so there is no need to be so formal. As if recalling something, Dr. Han leaned over and whispered in her ear, besides, Tuan Tuan and I have been close friends since childhood. His business is my business. She burst out laughing at his humorous words. Really? She thought, I never expected Director Lam to have such a lively friend. After changing into her surgical clothes, she entered the operating room where the young man lay on the table. Smiling, she encouraged him. Are you all right? Do not be too nervous. The young man looked at her gratefully. Dr. Kwong, thank you. I've already told my mother that whether the surgery succeeds or fails, she will give you that evidence. Dr. Kwong's eyes were full of resolve. All right, although I cannot guarantee the outcome, I will do my very best. Her expression suddenly became serious as she ordered her assistant, begin anesthesia. Hemostatic forceps. The assistant promptly handed them to her. The heart monitor continued to beep. The assistant reported, the patient's breathing is failing and his heart rhythm is unstable. Please monitor his blood pressure at all times. After the long operation, Dr. Kwong's face was drenched in sweat. She instructed, administer high-concentration oxygen when necessary. Perform a tracheotomy and provide oxygen now. Time ticked away, and the operation lasted a full 10 hours. The moment the operating room doors opened, the mother hurriedly rose. They're out. They're out. Anxiously, she asked, Dr. Kwong, how did the surgery go? Dr. Kwong removed her mask and answered with a confident smile. The surgery was very successful. However, he must remain under observation in intensive care tonight. If his recovery goes well, he can be transferred to a regular ward the day after tomorrow. Finally relieved, the mother's body went limp as she knelt before Dr. Kwong. Dr. Kwong, thank you. You saved our entire family. Dr. Kwong reached out to help her up, but the mother insisted on kneeling. Left with no choice, she said, Ma'am, please stand up. You do not need to do this. This was the condition we agreed upon. Only then did the mother remember what she still had to do. All right. She took a notebook from her bag and handed it to Dr. Kwong. Q Hatch said that regardless of the outcome, I was to give it to you. I have kept it with me all along. Everything is in here. You must keep it safe. Dr. Kwong accepted it and advised, Chow Hatch's surgery is over. In a few days, the two of you should leave this place as quickly as possible. Go somewhere no one can find you and start a new life. The mother naturally understood how serious things would become once the notebook was exposed, so she nodded. Understand. I will go home and pack immediately. Dr. Kwong returned to the changing room. Rather than leaving at once, she opened the notebook and began reading. The first few pages were mostly daily records, including living expenses, medicine, hospital bills, book fees, rent, and records of debts borrowed by the Chow family. Dr. Kwong turned several more pages and found what she was looking for. The contents were brief, but detailed enough. She closed the notebook and sighed inwardly. The person involved was already dead. Trying to completely bring down Chairman Trin with this sheet of paper alone would be nothing but wishful thinking. However, this check was highly valuable evidence. Once its account was traced, Chairman Trin would eventually be exposed. She carefully put the notebook into her bag, her mind full of tangled thoughts. She had originally intended to investigate Trin Na Quan's connection to the explosion, yet she had unexpectedly uncovered Director Lam's family case. Deeply troubled, she slowly left the hospital. There is still no clue regarding the true culprit behind the explosion. If she told Director Lam about the notebook, he would surely send Chairman Trin to prison to clear his father's name. But if that happened, could she continue staying with the Trin family to investigate? As she stood lost in thought, she heard his warm, deep voice. It's raining. I came to take you home. Looking up at the man holding an umbrella over her, she was overcome with mixed emotions, wondering whether she should give it to him. Later, Director Lam took her to a park not far from where they lived to relax. Watching the bustling crowd ahead, she suddenly said, Thank you for what you did earlier. The surgery was successful. He took a sip of water and looked at her meaningfully. It was nothing. On the contrary, Han-sun said you were excellent. He even wanted to recruit you to work at his hospital. Dr. Kwong nervously squeezed the cup in her hand, too guilty to meet his eyes. I said that after the surgery, I would tell you everything. He smiled faintly. That's right. I'm ready to listen. She asked slowly. Earlier, you told me about your father. Have you ever considered that perhaps it was not an accident? Director Lam tensed all over, and the smile vanished from his face. He asked seriously, What do you mean? Dr. Kwong sighed. She decided to tell him the truth. The food scandal from back then was not caused by negligence in management and supervision. It was, for some reason, the moment she got this far, he was seized by a profound sense of unease. She paused for a few seconds before continuing. Someone deliberately poisoned the food. His eyes filled with shock as he fired off questions. Who did it? And how do you know? She looked at him and answered loudly and clearly. The mother and son I operated on are the family of the man who carried out the poisoning. At this point, Director Lamb could no longer remain calm. He abruptly stood up and demanded, "Are you saying I helped operate on the son of the person responsible for my father's death?" She set down her glass of water and replied solemnly, without panic. This was the condition for them to tell the truth. Besides, don't you want to know who ordered it? Her cold gaze gave him an ominous feeling, and his expression immediately turned grim. She rose and walked toward him step by step. Judging from that expression, you already have an answer in your heart. As if she wanted to make him face reality, she leaned close to his ear and whispered each word, making his heart ache. "That's right. Your respected chairman, the final beneficiary, was the one behind it." He still wanted to make excuses for someone. Though he had already sensed something suspicious, he still asked, "What evidence do you have?" His father left behind a confession letter. It clearly states that Chairman Trin ordered him to poison the food. Is that enough? Director Lamb was still half convinced and voiced his doubts. If he wanted to confess, why didn't he come forward and clear things up all these years ago? She shrugged. He died in a car accident during the second year after the food safety scandal. A man who never drank died in a drunk driving accident. Don't you find that suspicious? Director Lamb frowned slightly and stiffly asked, "Where is the confession letter?" She did not hand it over immediately, instead probing, "What would you do if you had it?" A murderous aura radiated from him as his icy voice rang out. "If everything you said is true, I will use it to clear my father's name. That means I'll immediately send Chairman Trin to prison and make him face the punishment of the law." She fell silent after hearing this. His decision was exactly what she herself had once considered. Sure enough, she and he were two different kinds of people. If it were her, she could never let the man responsible for murder receive such a light punishment. "I'm sorry, but until I uncover the whole truth, I can't give it to him." After thinking it over, she took out her phone and showed him a video. "Director Lamb, you truly are an upright man. Unfortunately, the evidence was burned by Trin Na Quan long ago." He refused to give up and hurriedly asked, "If the physical evidence is gone, what about the witnesses? Where are that mother and son?" She waved dismissively, as though it had nothing to do with her. "They vanished without a trace the day after the surgery. Trin Na Quan has never spared them all these years." Director Lamb was an experienced businessman, so he naturally noticed the loophole in her words. His face darkened as he said coldly, "Dr. Kwong, are you playing games with me?" She met his gaze without flinching and smiled. "Oh, I'm only telling you the truth." Angrily, he grabbed her arm and demanded, "This clearly has nothing to do with you. What is your purpose in investigating all this?" Facing his interrogation, she casually pulled her arm free from Director Lamb's grasp. Her eyes were deep and unreadable. Rubbing her aching wrist, she said, "You aren't the only one in this world burdened with a tragic life, but I can guarantee that I'm not your enemy." After that, the two fell silent. The suffocating atmosphere made even the puppy lying on the sofa whimper softly in fear. "If you have no evidence for what you said tonight, then you should keep it buried in your heart." With that, he decisively turned and left without waiting for her. Whenever something stressful happened, Director Lamb would take out his motorcycle and ride to relieve his stress. He twisted the throttle hard and sped down the deserted streets. He thought to himself that when Chairman Trin and his father were still in school, they had been close senior and junior classmates. Later, they had founded Trin Group together and jointly invested in building it. After the food safety scandal, Chairman Trin had personally paid compensation to the victims' families in order to ease his father's burden. Not to mention that, after his parents died, Chairman Trin had always treated him well over the years. He hesitated inwardly. But if what Dr. Kwong said was true, then before his father died, he had transferred his shares to Chairman Trin, who had indeed become the final beneficiary. He did not know what agreement the two men had made, but his father had trusted Chairman Trin deeply. Before his father went to prison, he had entrusted Director Lamb to Chairman Trin's care. Yet there was one question that had long troubled him. Why had Chairman Trin promised his father but failed to pick him up as agreed? Later, when he had the chance to meet one of his father's former employees, the man had mentioned the matter with countless doubts. He said that before that batch of food left the factory, it had gone through several rounds of his father's inspection and approval. If there had truly been a problem at the time, there was no way his father would not have discovered it. On a gloomy day, Chairman Trent had brought him terrible news. The man had sorrowfully told him, "The court sentenced your father to 15 years in prison. It's neither a short nor a long sentence. But why did your father choose to end his own life?" Upon hearing that, he had cried until he had no tears left, his heart constantly thinking of his father. His motorcycle continued racing through the frigid night as he exhaustedly wondered, what was the truth behind all of this? Ahead, the yellow traffic light flashed continuously, signaling that it was about to turn red. He eased off the throttle and squeezed the brake, but what happened next made his entire body stiffen. The brake lever did not respond at all. His eyes widened. He sensed something terrible and the faint scent of a conspiracy. What was going on? Why were the brakes not working? In that hazy memory, he saw a childhood scene that he seemed unwilling to recall. Back then, the children from the whole neighborhood had surrounded him and pelted him with stones. Bad guy, bad guy. The son of a murderer is a murderer too. At the time, he could only curl up on the ground and shield himself as he endured the beating. After they had beaten him up, one boy asked anxiously, "What if he tells the nun?" His companion replied stubbornly, "What are you afraid of? We're only upholding justice." Another boy sneered, "That's right, that's right. Don't save him any dinner either." Back then, he could only hide in the shadows, too afraid to raise his head and look at anyone. When he was at the bottom of despair, a girl used a handkerchief to wipe the dirt from his face. She gently told him, "Don't listen to what they say." Back in the present, Dr. Kwong was treating his injuries when she heard his soft groan. "You're awake." He opened one eye and asked, "Where am I?" She went over and pressed the call button for a nurse, answering his question at the same time. "You're at Han Sen's hospital. Does your head hurt? I'll call the nurse." Director Lam tried to sit up, but the pain throughout his body made him wince. She hurried over to support him. "Don't move around. There's a fracture in your arm bone. You need to rest for a while." She looked at him suspiciously and asked, "Aren't you supposed to be an expert rider? How did you crash so badly?" Director Lam felt as if a flock of crows was cawing over his head, especially with Dr. Kwong staring at him so intently. He nearly wanted to burrow into the ground. He quickly changed the subject. "Why are you here?" At that moment, his friend appeared and smugly answered for her. "Of course I called her here." The man jokingly elbowed him and laughed meaningfully. "No need to thank me, Jun." The elbow hit his injured spot, and Director Lam cried out in pain. His friend showed no remorse and continued grinning. Saw thee. After the brief joking, he turned serious. "Luckily, you were still able to call me before you passed out. How did you crash so badly?" His answer shocked both listeners. "The brakes failed." His friend asked skeptically, "How could that happen? Worn out parts?" Or Director Lam immediately shook his head. "No, my bike was just serviced at the dealership." Dr. Kwong's expression also darkened as she reminded him. "Was it an accident, or did someone tamper with it? Have you checked the motorcycle?" Director Lam held his head and sighed. "I haven't had time. I woke up here." His friend hurriedly suggested, "Your bike is still at the scene. I haven't had it dealt with yet. Why don't we go take a look?" Director Lam agreed with the suggestion. "Let's go and see." Very soon, all three of them arrived at the scene of the accident. Seeing that everything remained untouched, he said, "Luckily it happened late at night. The scene is still intact." Then he bent down and inspected every detail of the motorcycle. His friend impatiently stood nearby and asked, "So, did you find anything?" "I don't know much about motorcycles." Director Lam picked up the brake cable and calmly gave his conclusion. "This cut is very clean. Someone deliberately cut it." Upon hearing that, his friend pushed up his glasses and instantly transformed into a famous detective. "I know. The dealership must have a grudge against you." Director Lam was helpless at his friend's narrow-minded conclusion. "Can you use your brain for once? Every vehicle is thoroughly inspected before delivery. Who would dare do something so obvious?" At that moment, Dr. Kwong noticed something strange. She pointed and asked, "What is this?" He quickly went over to inspect it. "It's not part of the bike. Judging from the color, it isn't paint from the motorcycle either." She carefully took out a tissue and wrapped up the strange substance. "Let's collect it first, then have it tested." His friend quickly offered, "Why not give it to me? I'll take it to the lab for testing. That'll be the fastest way. We may have results as early as tomorrow." Elsewhere, after an intimate encounter in bed, the girl in the red dress still seemed dissatisfied. She pouted and complained, "Honestly, all you know how to do is look at your phone." The man paid her no attention and continued looking at his phone. "There's something urgent I need to deal with." "What could possibly be so urgent that it has you this restless?" The moment she asked, he cursed irritably. Damn it, isn't it all because of that bastard Director Lamb? He intercepted my private shipment and even reported me to Dad, making me pay more than 100,000 yuan in compensation. While applying lipstick, the girl looked down on the matter. Isn't it just a little over 100,000 yuan? I thought it was something serious. Her words irritated him, and he snapped. What the hell do you know? That was a major client I worked hard to secure. If the cooperation had gone smoothly, there would have been huge orders afterward. His favor toward the woman before him dropped even further. He thought resentfully, this stupid woman knows nothing except how to spend my money. It's time to make her useful. With that thought, he put on a hypocritical smile and walked over to her. As he kneaded her shoulders, he coaxed sweetly, "Na Sang, isn't all the money I earned for you to spend? I was planning to buy you a yacht for your birthday once this deal succeeded. Haven't you always wanted one?" Na Sang's eyes immediately lit up. Are you serious? She joyfully jumped up and threw herself in his arms. Wonderful. I knew you loved me the most. Thinking of her dream, yacht made her even more pleased. At the last gathering with my friends, they laughed at me. This time, I have to show off and make their eyes pop. He immediately put on a sorrowful expression. But now, I'm afraid that won't be possible. He promptly shifted all the blame to Director Lamb. Not saying, if you want to blame someone, blame Director Lamb. He ruined this partnership, so there's nothing I can do. Na Sang was instantly provoked, her fury rising. That bastard is always getting in our way. Ever since he came to our home, Dad has never treated us kindly. We are Dad's biological children. Putting on a righteous appearance, he patted Na Sang's shoulder and continued to sow discord. Maybe Dad will even let him inherit Trin Group one day. Then neither of us will have a peaceful life. Our eldest sister only cares about herself. I think we're the only ones who can rely on each other. His performance was flawless. Na Sang, I truly can't bear to see you live a hard life in the future. Are you willing to help me? She had been completely manipulated by this eldest brother. All right, what do you want me to do? After dropping off Director Lam and Dr. Kwong, his friend rolled down the window before leaving and said, "Once the test results are out, I'll contact both of you right away." Director Lam nodded lightly. "Thanks, brother." She waved goodbye and added, "Be careful on the road." The two then walked and talked together. Director Lam looked at the woman beside him for a while before speaking. "Regarding the food factory matter, I don't know what your purpose is, but don't act recklessly. I sincerely advise you that bringing down Chairman Trin will not be easy." Dr. Kwong looked up at him with her large eyes. "So you believe me now? There are indeed suspicious points in this matter, but I need solid evidence." Her mood sank after hearing that. "It's too late today. Get some rest." When Dr. Kwong went inside, only a quiet space remained. "I'm so tired, I can barely keep my eyes open." But when she reached her bedroom door, she noticed something was wrong. Seeing the light coming from inside the room, she was filled with suspicion. I clearly turned off the light before I left." Just then, the sound of the doorknob turning came from inside the room, making her freeze in shock. Trina Kwan stood there holding a notebook, smiling smugly. "Good evening." Dr. Kwong stared at the notebook in his hand and was startled. "This is bad." But outwardly, she remained calm as she demanded, "Why were you in my room?" He shrugged and laughed triumphantly. "This is my house. I can go in whenever I want. Why would I need to notify anyone?" Trin Na Quan waved the notebook in his hand and sneered. "No wonder you've been sneaking around lately. I never expected you to find this. I thought it had already been burned to ashes all those years ago." Dr. Kwong tried desperately to snatch back the notebook, but failed. "What right do you have to rummage through my things? Get it back now." He raised the notebook high, his eyes full of danger. "I really underestimated you. What exactly is your purpose in investigating these things?" Dr. Kwong remained composed and replied, "I only want to protect my own life." Trin Na Quan looked doubtful at that answer. "Protect your life?" Dr. Kwong immediately seized the upper hand. "You want to use me to get rid of Chairman Trin? Then get rid of me afterward, don't you? Like a mantis stalking a cicada while the oriole waits behind it. When the time comes, you'll say I killed myself out of fear of punishment while you walk away clean. I'm not stupid. Of course, I had to prepare a way out for myself." Exposed on the spot, Trin Na Quan gave a sinister smile and dropped all pretenses. "You saw right through me, but heaven is helping me. Now that I have this notebook, I can send my father to prison openly and legitimately. Trin Group will soon be mine." Dr. Kwong clenched her fists, silently steadying herself. "Stay calm. Stay calm." Dr. Kwong immediately gave an analysis that was difficult to refute. Even if Chairman Trin is gone, according to the order of inheritance, the first heir would be Trin Na Hien, not you. Besides, Chairman Trin may have already prepared a will. Trin Na Quan confidently held up the notebook. No, as long as I have this, I can force my father to revise his will. Naturally, he'll have to change the heir to me. He warned her coldly. And you, if you want to stay alive, you'd better keep your mouth shut and get out of here immediately. Dr. Kwong was no pushover and retorted, "Keep dreaming, idiot." Enraged by the insult, he immediately saw red. Damn it, you really don't know what's good for you. Dr. Kwong crossed her arms and began to manipulate him psychologically. You need this diary, but it will only get you killed faster. What do you mean? Her eyes turned sharp as she analyzed the situation for him. Without conclusive evidence, do you think you can bring down Chairman Trin based solely on the diary of a dead man? He rushed toward her and grabbed her by the collar. Where are that mother and son? Dr. Kwong's face remained cold. Let go. They left long ago, of course. If they didn't run, were they supposed to wait for you to capture them? Use your brain, Trin Na Quan. Seeing the prize before him, but unable to seize it, he was overcome with rage and gritted his teeth. Damn it, Fine. As long as I submit this to the court, they'll reopen the old case. Suddenly, an idea came to him. It says here that my father framed Director Lamb's father. If I tell Director Lamb about this, there won't be anyone left by my father's side. Thinking of this, he burst into laughter. Yes, that's what I'll do. Dr. Kwong's brows suddenly drew together. No, I can't let him give this diary to Director Lamb. With that thought, she switched to her second plan and said coldly, Chairman Trin has already discovered that you were the one who hired the gunman in the previous shooting. Trin Na Quan was horrified and blurted out, What? Impossible. I already took care of it. The corners of her lips lifted in a faint smile. Realizing that she had deliberately been probing him, Trin Na Quan flew into a rage and shouted, You lied to me. With an indifferent expression, she said, When I changed Chairman Trin's bandages, I personally saw Butler, Zhao, deliver those documents to him. I advise you to return the diary to me right now. Otherwise, I'll tell Chairman Trin that you intend to use it against him. When that happens, we'll see who dies first. Fear surfaced in Trin Na Quan's eyes. If father truly had evidence of the shooting, he would have to make other plans. He absolutely could not take that risk. After weighing the pros and cons, he resentfully threw the diary back to her. Fine, take it back. His hatred for her grew even stronger. He left in a foul mood. Very good. I really underestimated you. With that, he slammed the door and stormed out. Dr. Kwong bent down, picked up the diary, and hugged it to her chest with a sigh of relief. Then she remembered something important. She hurried to the bookshelf where she had hidden it and checked. The USB drive was still intact. Only then did Dr. Kwong finally relax, though her heart remained heavy. Thank goodness it wasn't discovered. I need to find somewhere safe to hide these things. When Trin Na Quan returned to his room, he paced back and forth anxiously. Does father really have evidence of the shooting? Then why hasn't he made a move against me? His mind was in turmoil as he made wild guesses. Was father sparing him out of father-son affection? Was it because of Trin Group's stock price? Or did he have some other purpose? No matter what, he could not wait any longer. He immediately made a bold decision. It would be better to send father on his way first. He just needed to find a scapegoat. After finalizing his plan, Trin Na Quan took out his phone and called Trin Na Sang. Upon receiving his call, she rushed over at once. Seriously, what could be so urgent that you called me over this late at night? Seeing him sitting on the floor, red-faced and slightly drunk, she was surprised. Oh my God, what happened? Trin Na Quan immediately began acting. Baby, you're here. Na Sang, come have a few drinks with me. She stepped forward to support him. What's wrong? Jing Na Quan smai bito li. It's over. Everything's over. He picked up another bottle and drained it. Trin Na Sang snatched it away. Stop drinking. What do you mean it's over? What exactly are you talking about? Putting on a pitiful expression, Trin Na Quan began to complain. Father never liked me since I was young. He has always treated that brat, Director Lamb, as the treasure of the family. I'm clearly father's biological son. He lowered his head, covered his face, and continued through tears. All these years, I worked my heart out for father, yet this is what I ended up with. Now I have nothing. Nothing at all. His words stirred Trin Na Sang's sympathy. Don't say that. You still have me. Tell me what happened. Trin Na Quan's performance was flawless as he forced out 2 streams of tears. Na Sang, if I'm gone one day, you have to live happily. You're the one I worry about most. Trin Na Sang was truly moved. Where are you going? Are you leaving me? Trin Na Quan replied meaningfully, I'm about to leave this world. His words completely shocked Trin Na Sang. Unable to hold back her tears, she said, What nonsense are you talking about? Trin Na Quan saw his chance and immediately got to the point. Father knows I was behind a shooting. That shooting almost took Father's life. Holding his head helplessly, he said, So I think Father definitely won't forgive me. He'll have me killed. Trin Na Sang covered her mouth in alarm. What? Didn't we already deal with those people? Trin Na Quan threw himself into the act, trembling in terror as he clutched his head. I don't know where things went wrong, but Father knows I did it, and he won't let me off. Then he made up another story to fuel Trin Na Sang's resentment. I secretly looked at Father's will at the lawyer's office. He left all his property to a dog. Can you believe it? A dog. He held her and sobbed. Father would rather leave his estate to a dog than leave even a little money to the two of us. Jingya Sang, what? Trin Na Quan hugged his younger sister and lamented. Otherwise, why would I do something like that? Na Sang, I did it all for you, for our future. I really can't bear to leave you alone. Sinisterly, he led her step by step into his trap. You know I've loved you most ever since we were children. Will you save me this time? He gave a cold smile and whispered in her ear, I really don't want to die. Trin Na Sang crumbled under his words. Believing that he was sincere with her, she sobbed, How could I possibly abandon you? For you, I'd even be willing to die. But how can I help you? The bait had been taken. Jingya Guan pulled a vial from his pocket. Trin Na Sang's eyes widened as she asked, What is this? Trin Na Quan immediately revealed his true nature. As long as Father takes this, we can live happily together forever. Those words seemed to carry a spell, drawing Trin Na Sang in. Live happily together forever. Without hesitation, she reached out and took the vial from Trin Na Quan. Early the next morning, at the breakfast table, Chairman Trin looked at Director Lam with concern. Dao Tuan, is your injury all right? Director Lam shook his head lightly. I'm fine. Don't worry. Trin Na Sang pursed her lips and began her usual mockery. Oh dear, did someone offend too many people and get beaten up? Director Lam pretended not to hear her. Dr. Kwong changed the subject. Let me serve you some soup. Thank you. Trin Na Sang still would not stop. Dr. Kwong, you're certainly attentive. We hired you to look after my father, not to seduce men. Chairman Trin was immediately displeased. Na Sang, have you said enough? She stood up with a sweet smile, putting on the appearance of a dutiful daughter. Father, since Dr. Kwong is busy caring for him, I'll take care of you. Shamelessly, she blew on the porridge to cool it down. Then she brought it to her father's mouth. Come on, father, open up. Butler Zhao shuddered at the sight. Miss, perhaps you should let me do it. Seeing his daughter's overbearing behavior, Chairman Trin lost his appetite before he had even eaten. He set down his chopsticks heavily. Butler Zhao, I'm full. Take me back to my room. Yes, sir. But Trin Na Sang was one step ahead and seized the wheelchair. I'll take father back to his room. He eagerly anticipated seeing the result of his handiwork. I'm full too. You all take your time. Dr. Kwong keenly sensed that something was wrong. What were they plotting now? After breakfast, the two went to the hospital, where Director Lam's friend handed over a test report. The results are in. The substance is nail polish. I don't know much about this, but the female doctor in the lab said it's some kind of Aurora cat eye nail polish. It's the newest type and hasn't even been released on the market yet. An image of Trin Na Sang's freshly painted nails flashed through Dr. Kwong's mind. They were also Aurora cat eye nails. She sneered. So it was Trin Na Sang again. His friend turned to ask, Trin Na Sang, your older sister? Director Lam corrected him unhappily. She isn't my older sister. I've heard about what she's done. She's really no ordinary person. Rubbing his aching head, he said helplessly, she's a lunatic, and she has no scruples at all, so we can't do anything to her for now. Dr. Kwong radiated determination. Soon enough, there will come a day when we settle both old and new scores with them. That evening, back at the Trin residence, Dr. Kwong performed Chairman Trin's routine examination. Your blood pressure is stable. I'll prepare today's medication for you shortly. Chairman Trin smiled politely. Thank you for your trouble. My health has been recovering rather well lately. At that moment, Trin Na Sang came in with a basin of water, wearing a falsely sweet expression. Father, I brought water for you to soak your feet in. Butler Zhao found her unusual behavior unsettling. Miss, let me do it. Jingya Sang imeditan zefe. Butler Zhao. This is a daughter's filial devotion to her father. How can I let you do it for me? The temperature is perfect, father. I even thoughtfully added flower petals to the water. While soaking his feet, she took the chance to scratch Chairman Trin's foot with her nail. Dr. Kwong noticed it too. Chairman, I'll get the medical kit to treat that for you. Pretending to feel guilty, Trin Na Sang volunteered. I'll go. I hurt father, so I truly feel terrible. Chairman Trin showed little emotion. Both of you go together. Dr. Kwong needs to prepare today's medicine anyway. At those words, a strange suspicion arose in Dr. Kwong's heart. Why would he let Trin Na Sang come into contact with his medicine? Seeing her still standing there, Trin Na Sang urged her from ahead. Hurry up. Can't you see father is bleeding? Why are you dawdling? After the two had left, Butler Zhao helped Chairman Trin sit down and voiced his concern. Miss Sang's behavior has been rather strange. I am worried. Chairman Trin sighed. That foolish girl has been manipulated again. Chairman, would you like to know what Butler Zhao means? Chairman Trin cut him off at once. No need. Soon, Trin Na Sang returned carrying an absurdly large bandage. Father, let me dress your wound. She even dramatically brought a magnifying glass to inspect the wound, leaving everyone present speechless. Chairman Trin looked at her in exasperation and politely declined. The wound is nearly healed. Let Dr. Kwong disinfect it. Then I'll get your medicine for you. Holding the vial Trin Na Kwon had given her, she nervously looked behind her to see whether anyone had noticed. Being naturally cautious, Dr. Kwong was about to stop her from touching Chairman Trin's medicine. Miss Na Sang, before she could finish, Chairman Trin grabbed her shoulder. Chairman Trin looked at his daughter and spoke suggestively. Na Sang has become much more sensible lately. That comforts me greatly. Feeling somewhat guilty, she smiled ingratiatingly. Of course, I care most about father's health. Look, father, is it 2 red pills, 1 white pill, and half a yellow pill? Is that right? Hurry and take them. The moment Dr. Kwong glanced at the medicine tray, she noticed something was wrong. This powder. She wanted to warn Chairman Trin, but he was an old fox. How could such a trick escape his notice? He shook his head, signaling for Dr. Kwong to pretend she knew nothing. Then, under his daughter's expectant gaze, he picked up the pills and swallowed them. Watching her father finish every pill with her own eyes, Trin Na Sang's lips curled into an uncontrollable smile of triumph. Seeing that the plan had succeeded, she promptly took her leave. Father, since you've taken your medicine, I won't disturb your rest any longer. The anniversary celebration is about to begin, so I need to hurry over and arrange the equipment. But Trin Na Sang did not actually leave. She stood outside the door with her back against the wall, waiting eagerly. She wondered how long it would take for the drug to work. When only the 3 of them remained in the room, Dr. Kwong wanted to voice her doubts. Chairman, just now. But Chairman Trin interrupted her. I want to rest. You two should leave as well. When Butler Zhao stepped out and saw that Trin Na Sang was still outside, he asked, Miss Sang, why are you still here? Looking guilty. Jing Na Sang stam I. Just then, Chairman Trin began coughing repeatedly from inside the room. Everyone's expression changed, while Trin Na Sang secretly rejoiced. It's taking effect? She put on an anxious expression and hurriedly pushed open the door. Father, what's wrong? Soon afterward, Chairman Trin was rushed to the emergency room. After hearing the news, Director Lam rushed over and waited outside the emergency room. Meanwhile, Trin Na Sang was in an excellent mood, touching up her makeup and humming a tune, not worried in the slightest. Dr. Kwong watched her coldly. It was in moments like this that people were most likely to expose themselves. One look was enough to reveal each person's true reaction. Trin Na Kwon also rushed over after hearing the news. How is father? Trin Na Sang ran over with a smile to inform him. Brother, you're finally here? I was so scared. Father is still in the emergency room. Trin Na Kwon immediately placed all the blame on Dr. Kwong. Pointing at her, he said, Dr. Kwong, you prepare all of father's medicine. Did you harm him? Dr. Kwong could not be bothered arguing with the shameless siblings. Mr. Trin, the matter has not been investigated, yet you're already making false accusations and condemning someone else? Are you feeling guilty? Trin Na Kwon was startled inwardly, but retorted loudly. Don't talk nonsense. Your father's personal physician. If it wasn't you, then who else could it be? As the two argued, the emergency room doors suddenly opened. Trin Na Kwon urgently asked, Is my father still alive? Butler Zhao anxiously asked as well. Is the chairman? Only Trin Na Sang seemed unconcerned. She was happily browsing luxury goods on her phone. The chairman's condition is not optimistic. I'm afraid that in the next few days, The doctor's words caused Director Lam and Trin Na Quan to have very different thoughts. Though Trin Na Quan felt as if he had won the lottery, he pretended to be distraught and grabbed the doctor by the collar. "My father really can't be saved? Did you not do everything you could?" The doctor struggled to push him away and gravely replied, "We have done everything possible, but the chairman's health has not fully recovered since his previous surgery. Even if another doctor took over, the outcome would be the same." After receiving confirmation from the doctor, Trin Na Quan hung his head and sat on a chair. To others, his trembling body made him appear to be genuinely crying. "He really can't be saved? Sobi." Trin Na Sang approached and pretended to comfort him. "Brother, you must stay strong. From now on, our Trin group can only depend on you." Director Lam and Dr. Kwong watched the two of them perform, too lazy to expose them. Trin Na Quan made sobbing sounds, but not a single tear came from his eyes. He could barely keep himself from laughing aloud because the outcome was exactly what he wanted. Director Lam walked over to ask the doctor, "Doctor, what exactly caused the chairman's condition?" "Director Lam, we have already sent the unidentified substance to the laboratory for analysis. We will have to wait a while longer for the results." Trin Na Quan stopped acting and listened intently. "Can the chairman still wake up?" The doctor shook his head. "At present, his bodily functions can only be sustained by machines. The chance of him regaining consciousness is very low." Trin Na Quan rushed forward again, hypocritically shaking the doctor by the shoulders. "Use the most expensive medicine and the best treatment. Save my father, no matter the cost." Seeing how agitated he was, the doctor repeatedly replied, Of course, of course." His behavior made Dr. Kwong let out a few cold laughs. Hearing her, Trin Na Quan was extremely displeased. He glared at her and snapped, "Your father's personal physician, yet you let him end up like this. Just wait, I'll make you pay." With that, he left without lingering. Trin Na Sang smiled and ran after him. "Brother, wait for me." Sensing something unusual, Director Lam asked, "What is really going on? Aren't you going in to see the old chairman?" He looked toward Butler Zhao, then continued, "I've lived in this house for many years, and I know Butler Zhao far better than you do. He is the chairman's true confidant. If something had really happened to the chairman, he would not be so indifferent right now." Then he looked at her and stated his own judgment. "Besides, judging by your expression, it seems that you also know there is more to this." Dr. Kwong could only praise his powers of observation. "I admit it, you're very perceptive. Earlier, Trin Na Quan forced me to drug the chairman. I refused. It seems he then incited Trin Na Sang to do it. But why did he suddenly become so desperate?" Dr. Kwong felt somewhat guilty. She could not let Director Lam know about the diary. After thinking for a moment, she made up an excuse. "I don't know either, but the chairman's behavior is very strange. He clearly saw through Trin Na Sang's little scheme, yet I don't know why he still went along with this act." Director Lam rested his chin on his hand, deep in thought. "I have a suspicion, but I can't be certain yet. Your situation is very dangerous right now. You're the chairman's personal physician, and the chairman has been poisoned." Dr. Kwong folded her arms and cut him off. "And aren't you in the same position? Once Trin Na Quan takes full control of Trin Group, you'll be thrown out of the family too. The day the chairman dies will be the day Trin Na Quan completely takes over Trin Group. So no matter what act the chairman is putting on, as long as Trin Na Quan inherits Trin Group, even if the chairman isn't dead yet, he'll have to die." Director Lam was rather surprised by her line of thinking. It seemed she had planned this long ago. She smiled and shifted his attention elsewhere. "That's simply the truth. I'm only trying to protect myself. So what do you intend to do?" Dr. Kwong smiled confidently and held out her hand to him. "Would you like to work with me again?" Looking at her hand, he struggled inwardly, but then he reached out and took it. "I agree to cooperate." Dr. Kwong smiled brightly, her expression full of meaning. "The time has come. Then let's make the first move." A few days later, on Christmas Eve at Trin Grand Hotel, the ballroom was filled with prominent figures from every field. Two people approached Trin Na Quan, smiling ingratiatingly. "President Trin, please remember to consider us for the East District project." "That's right. We'll be relying on President Trin to support us from now on." Trin Na Quan had risen to the top in a single leap and was immensely pleased with himself. "Haha, I'll still need everyone's support so that we can prosper together." Seeing that the time had come, Trin Na Sang started the party livestream. "Merry Christmas, everyone. I'm your host, Na Sang. I'm live streaming Trin Group's anniversary celebration right now. Comment Trin Group shines. Na Sang is the prettiest below for a chance to enter our prize draw." She pointed at Trin Na Quan beside her and continued with a smile. Now, please welcome my brother, the heir to Trin Group, Mr. Trin Na Quan, to give his speech. Jing Na Quan imeditan bigang. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming to support me and Trin Group. He began to squeeze out a few tears to win the sympathy of the guests and the online audience. Everyone probably knows that my father, Chairman Trin Tai Van, is currently in critical condition at the hospital. But our business partners need not worry. From this point on, I will take over the company on my father's behalf and inherit the will he left behind. Looking every bit the leader, Trin Na Quan declared passionately, under my leadership, Trin Group will continue to rise and never stop advancing. I promise to lead Trin Group toward an even more glorious future. His impassioned declaration immediately won the approval of countless people. So, he's the heir of the Trin family? Must be. After all, he's the old chairman's only son. Trin Na Quan pointed to the projection screen behind him. Next, I will introduce Trin Group's 5-year development plan. Please look at the large screen behind me. He never expected the screen to be filled with intimate photos of himself and Trin Na Sang. The entire hall instantly erupted in an uproar. Hearing the whispers, Trin Na Quan realized something was wrong and anxiously looked behind him. The scene playing on the giant screen made him break out in a cold sweat. The guests immediately looked at him differently, and some even took out their phones to record it. Amid the crowd, Director Lam glanced at Dr. Kwong. She remained utterly calm as she watched the results of her handiwork. The incident immediately shocked those watching the live stream at home. Oh my God, is this really an elite family scandal? I can't believe it. Everyone, rewind the stream. A sibling romance scandal that will shake the world. Is this real or fake? Are they trying to get famous through scandal? The rich really do know how to play. Trin Na Quan flew into a rage and pointed at the staff member in charge. Why haven't you turned it off yet? Humiliated, Trin Na Sang did not dare look up. She cursed furiously. Damn it. He hurriedly tried to explain. Don't believe those pictures, everyone. They're all fake, photoshopped. It must be a business rival trying to slander me. We're biological siblings. We could never do something like that. As Trin Na Quan tried to explain himself, the screen behind him switched to another set of images. Images of people he had previously oppressed. The discussion grew even louder. Damn, there's more. Wow, he sleeps with both men and women. That's disgusting. It looks like the thing with his own sister is real too. Trin Na Quan went rigid as his secrets were exposed, while Trin Na Sang stared at the screen without blinking. He still tried to salvage his image. It's all fabricated. None of it is real. Don't believe it. I will definitely find whoever is behind this and use the law to prove my innocence. The images continued changing until someone noticed a disturbing photo. Wait, is that person in the corner a student? In the photo, there really was a student struggling on the ground, and the culprit was none other than Trin Na Quan. The online community completely exploded. The number of viewers kept rising, accompanied by endless abuse directed at Trin Na Quan. Oh my God, that girl is wearing the uniform of the 10th high school. I can't believe he assaulted a student. He preyed on a minor. This bastard should die. He must be sentenced. He must be sentenced. I urge the authorities to investigate immediately. We can't allow someone like him to remain free. Reading these comments, Trin Na Quan's face turned green. Fear filled his eyes. Though he was standing in an air-conditioned room, his entire body was soaked in sweat. No matter how hard he tried to defend himself, no one believed him.